which they precariously glided into this life and upon which they remained delicately balanced thereafter. Harriet had many children in close succession following her husband's, my grandfather's, return from World War II, during a time he was meant to have attended Dartmouth College, just as his own father had. Instead, he found himself responsible for the care of a growing family and a wife struggling to keep all of the remnants of their lives stitched together. Directly upon his return from the war, he was put in charge of the daily operations of the family farm. It was a situation in which no one was set up for success, yet everyone had to carry on the best they could anyway. No doubt a familiar refrain that plays at times softly and at other times more loudly against the backdrop of everyone's lives. Each suffers the collateral damage life doles out. Like spoons full of ipecac, we swallow what is placed at our lips with the faith that it will help more than it harms, knowing full well that there will be consequences. For Harriet, these life challenges yielded erratic and unstable states of mind, not to mention an array of notably unconventional habits. While surely not an intentional strategy, her unusual habits served the function of getting her through life's extraordinary circumstances. They also happen to be what we fondly remember her by now. If her novel and unexpected combination of words didn't have the effect of keeping you teetering on the edge of your seat, then her quirky collection of habits certainly would. Upon entering her house, guests might be greeted by a rotting chicken carcass sitting atop the washing machine in the mudroom, where the anticipation of what lay in store would dissuade them from taking off their shoes. Harriet would stow away freshly baked chocolate cake in the filing cabinet, possibly with the logic no one would find it in there, although everyone eventually did. She cultivated a spectacular garden of colorful molds and crystals she kept inside the refrigerator, juxtaposed with the food that would be served each day. Growing up, my mom had to fish her clothes out of the deep freezer where Harriet conveniently placed any freshly washed laundry in twisted heaps parked next to packages of frozen meat wrapped in butcher paper. Each morning, my mom would have to excavate, thaw, dry, and iron the frozen clothing if there were to be any hope of reanimating and donning pieces of her wardrobe again. Imagine what those kinds of experiences prepares a human for. Harriet also had a number of pithy sayings we now lovingly refer to as Harrietisms. After the untimely death of my cousin, my Grandma Harriet offered up the following words of wisdom when the discussion among family turned to the topic of the upcoming birth of my daughter Sonia. You only have so much potential, and that's it. She then made a clicking noise with her tongue against the roof of her palate as if she were suddenly atop a horse, signaling it to giddy up and move on out before throwing her head back in unbridled laughter. While everyone else exchanged nervous and furtive glances around the table, someone thankfully broke the uneasy silence with a suggestion that we have the choice combination of words embroidered on a baby blanket. It was a toss-up between that and another of Harriet's favorite sayings. You don't have the sense God gave a soda cracker. A phrase, if you were the recipient of, you couldn't be sure wasn't a compliment. As is the case with many people we interact with in our lives, dialogue with Harriet was more like a one-way conversation, from her to you, interspersed with rhetorical questions she mostly didn't want you to answer, although nodding was tolerated. She would often go on, telling stories about the emblem bench. As a child, I thought she was referring to some kind of home base, a place where people go to rest and take refuge from being chased as they do in the game of tag, which in this case, ironically, it kind of was. The emblem bench was how she referred to the small farming community in the middle of nowhere, Wyoming, population 23, where she and her family lived on the Edwards family ranch. Other times she would become engrossed in telling stories about werbelows, a reference many mistook for mythical creatures or a species of marmots, when in fact she was referring to the neighbors whose surname was Werbelow.